what's most important to you and how can you take care of yourself too in the process.
Welcome to Mom Mentality, your virtual village of support. I'm Jessica Campbell, your family wellness coach, and I am committed to helping you prioritize your and your family's well-being. This podcast will be like your favorite ladies group chat come to life. We'll share the ups and downs of life for moms just like you, get real advice from coaches and experts, and I'll pop in with my own stories and tips on everyday challenges to the big questions. Whether you're juggling work from home, balancing adult life with parenthood, tackling ADHD, yours or your kids, or just trying to catch a breath, Mom Mentality is your spot.
So I'm Sarah Stirling. I'm a mom of two. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. And
Fun ages.
Yes, fun ages, which led me so much fun that I became a parent coach because we were having so much fun.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been parent coaching?
So I've been doing this for about 6 months now.
Awesome. Same.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, I think we must have graduated around the same time. I was 158.
Oh, I was 154. Yeah. So we were really close.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, awesome. So I know we talked a little bit about Matrescence. Is that how you say it? Is that proper?
I've heard some people say that. I say matrescence, but I think it's could go either way.
Okay. So can you explain a little bit about what that is for people who may not have heard it? Because I've actually never heard that term before. And I was like, why haven't I heard it? When I looked it up, I was like, you would think I would hear that, but it was something new for me. So
yes. So I think it's one of those things that when someone hears the word matrescence and then finds out what it is, it kind of shifts and changes everything for them and explains so much. So I won't hold you in suspense any longer. It's the identity shift of becoming a mom, sort of like how adolescence is the, shift of a teenager kind of becoming an adult, growing up. Like matrescence is the shift of becoming a mom. And it's really on every level of being. It's hormonal and, physical, obviously, particularly with like brain changes that actually happen, but it's also cultural and social and economic, unfortunately, right? And spiritual. It's really about, you have your identity from before motherhood, and then you kind of are becoming this other person. And in the beginning, it can be overwhelming because you don't know what's happening because most people have not heard this named. So you start to try to cling to, the idea that you need to be the same person you were before you were a mom, but you're quite simply not. And it's, leaning into that and like accepting and embracing that change.
Right. Yeah. I never knew there was like an actual term, I always knew there was like that shift and people talk about the shift, but I had never heard the actual term for it before, which is cool.
Yes. And there's a quote that I love her name is Dr. Arlie Athen. She's a leader in this matrescence field. And she says, words create worlds. So, you have this word and it really does create a whole new perspective on your experience of becoming a mom.
Yeah, I love that because actually there's like all this talk around mental health and labeling and this and that. And so for a while I struggled with my daughter. We both got diagnosed with ADHD a week apart. And I've talked about this in other podcast interviews, but I feel like for a while I was kind of caught up on that. Like, am I just looking for a label? Am I just wanting somebody to, put this I guess this label on like me and my kid just so that I feel better or I can turn into that person. But it's so true how freeing it is to have that and understand a little bit more how like that words creating worlds. Like that's what came to my mind is just how much freer we felt knowing like, okay, this is what it is. It's,
it's validation.
That label does really help.
Yeah. And I think because you wonder the whole time, like, what's wrong with me? Like, is this in my head? Is it anyone else experiencing this? And like that insecurity, kind of leads to self-silencing. So it's like people aren't talking about a lot of the challenges of early motherhood because they worry, like they're kind of ashamed. Like, isn't this supposed to be like, I'm enjoying every moment? And isn't this the greatest gift? And like, why am I sad? Why do I feel isolated? Why do I feel guilty all the time? Why do I feel all these things? And so it's really like shedding light on that and validating that experience.
Right. And I think it almost can go the other way too of like, well, we know it's hard. No one wants to hear about how it's hard. They already knew. We knew what it was going to be hard when we went into this and we chose it anyway, like that like shame spiral of like,
yes,
it's hard. Nobody cares because we all know motherhood's hard and it's fine. But it's like, that blanket statement of hard when all of our struggles are so uniquely different and also so similar.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
patterns are just slightly changed. And so, yeah, it's an interesting take on that.
Yeah, and I found what you just said really interesting because I think I kind of went into motherhood with this like blind optimism, or like I didn't, it was much harder than I thought.
Right.
And I didn't realize what I signed up for. And I was like, how did I, like, what is this? And I was
Right.
like, when do I get my break? You know, like
Right.
I sort of felt the opposite, like no one warned me about this.
Right. Well, like I went into motherhood, like I used to say, I want to have kids, and I know kids are going to drive me crazy because people used to give me a hard time. I've always been an old soul. My husband and I got together when we were young, like right out of high school. And so people would say, oh, it's not going to last, And I've always kind of had a little bit of a snobby attitude towards that, to be honest,
Hmm.
because I'm like, you don't know, you're not in my situation, but like being young and wanting to have a family, because I always wanted a family. I used to say when I was like 9 years old, I didn't care about a career. I was just like, I don't know, I just want to be a mom. When I got older, where it was actually a realistic thing, people would say, oh yeah, be careful what you wish for, whatever, like parenthood's crazy. And I'd say, well, I know my kids are going to drive me crazy, but it's going to be in the best way. And so I feel like I kind of had an idea, but once I got into it, I was like, this is a whole other level of crazy I did not know
Right.
existed. Like,
Right.
whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Hmm.
think it's blindsiding no matter what, because unless you go through it, you really have no idea until you're in your specific situation too, because we know they're all so different.
Oh yeah. I mean, like even just like having two kids now, it's like you have one kid and you think like this is what it's like to have a kid. And then you have another kid and they're like nothing like that kid. And all the things that worked with the first kid are not working with the second kid. And you're like, what?
100%.
So
I have
yeah.
three, so yes, I totally
Okay.
get that. Yeah, it's like the Wild West out here. I feel like you never know what you're gonna get. Everybody's so different. There's so many personalities. It's something. It really is.
Hmm.
Can
Oh yeah.
you kind of tell us a little bit more about how you even came to finding the term, finding the, I guess, work around it?
Sure. So I think it first kind of came on my radar through parent coaching. So while I was becoming a parent coach, I want to say someone mentioned it to me at that point, and I just started looking into it on my own. And it just like this light bulb went off. And I was like, because I love parent coaching because, you focus on like the parent child relationship and like supporting the parent. But like, I kind of felt like there was a little bit more on the parent side that I wanted to be able to offer.
Mhm.
And the matrescence experience really just explained so much more and went so much deeper, I think, with moms in particular, and like the experience of motherhood and the difference between our expectations and reality, which is often a place of grief, for whatever reason, those two things might differ. So that's how I came across it originally.
I just think that this is fascinating. And now I'm probably going to end up on my little ADHD rabbit hole, like just digging up so much
Let's
stuff
go.
because that's exactly like my, I guess, niche is from my perspective. It's moms with like childhood trauma or just traumas in general that they are working through as they are also becoming this new person, as they are parenting. And it's kind of like you said, it's like this identity shift. And for me, it was an identity shift in so many levels, like from physically changing to being a parent in a shifted role to then also like healing my inner child and doing that work. And so it was like this big storm that just all happened at once. And so yeah, it's really fascinating to me to think of that term and kind of, yeah, I think I'm gonna end up going down a rabbit hole, but
I mean, I think a big part of it too is how we've been taught or how it's been ingrained in us to view motherhood. Often, like motherhood equals martyrdom, right? Like the
right.
self sacrificing mom. The mom doesn't take a break. She's always working, whether she's a stay at home mom 24/7 or, working mom, working and then momming every other hour of the day. And it's just like kind of taking another look at a couple things. First of all, like how you're speaking to yourself in your hardest moments and where that comes from. And then it's also like your idea of strength and like what it means to be strong. Because I think so often we think of things like, what is a successful woman? What is a successful mother? What does she do? What is success? We often think of money when we think of success, or
Mhm.
we think of careers when we think of success, or we think of these like kind of like tackling the to-do list and like all
Right.
the things we did, like our value or worth is in our accomplishments, when really like strength can be something else. And so I think part of the motherhood journey is realizing there's strength in vulnerability, there's strength in softness, there's strength in supporting people, but also like having boundaries and taking care of yourself too. It's kind of unraveling everything you learned about what it means to be a mom and finding out what's most important to you and how can you take care of yourself too in the process.
Right. As you were saying that, I've had some like unraveling thoughts. This is why I love these kinds of conversations, because I tend to have this conversation with someone in my life very often about like men versus women. And
Mhm.
it's my dad. My dad was Mr. Mom. So we have a lot of these conversations anyway. But I was thinking, like, just in terms of society, how it's been a very corporal punishment kind of society that we've had where, you know, and like women not having the right to vote and all of these things. And it just seems like it's really unfolding where we need the women to be speaking up, because in life in general, I think there hasn't been enough of that feminine motherly energy within our
Mhm.
society. And we've done such a disservice to family in general in generations past. And I know my dad has that view, and he is actually a boomer.
Mhm.
And so him and
Okay.
I have talked about that, like different mentality. He's like, this is the boomer mentality. He'll say that, you know, like you have to give up everything. You have to give up everything. And while I get what he's saying, I'm also like, giving up everything doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It means, yes, if someone's going to eat, right? Like you want to make sure you're feeding your kids, or like, yeah, you might wait longer to get a new pair of shoes because your kids need shoes. And that stuff makes sense. However,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that you never get the shoes. It means that you find a way to find that balance. And yeah, you're going to take care of your kids first, but you have to find a way to take care of yourself in that. And so I've been trying to like work around that, like when we have those conversations, because I'm like, it doesn't mean like you get like hit by a bus and you just stay down forever. It just means that like,
Right.
okay, like this is the immediate thing because it's your kid, they have that, but you also need to find the way to work all of that in together. And
Yeah.
I think it's not just as moms that we've said that. It's like kind of what our society has really put on us for so long. And then the lack of that femininity within our culture. I think it's about to be like a woman's revolution, because
Yeah.
we need it. We need more of that love and softness.
Yes, exactly. And I think like a good part of the matrescence work is taking a look at your values and like in the context though of, you know, balancing your energy to like support those values.
Mhm.
So like balancing masculine and feminine energy. Every one of us has both. If something's out of balance, if your energy's out of balance, it can, you know, result in something like sarcasm, like would be like
Right.
a masculine energy imbalance. So just like finding like your neutrality. And something I heard recently was you don't have to take the elevator all the way to the bottom floor. You can get off at any point. So
Right.
that came to mind when you when you said we're talking about the bus and staying
Yeah.
down.
I don't know
So
why that even came
yeah.
to my head, but that was the thought. Like, okay, now you're just laying there and you're like, this is what it is.
Right. Yep. And
Yeah.
I think and also kind of coming back to like being on an airplane when they say like push your oxygen mask on first so
Yes.
that you can't pour from an empty cup essentially. So
Yeah.
to the extent that you are sacrificing yourself, it's that much harder to meet everyone else's needs. And
Right.
you're also modeling to your kids how to be a mom. So like if you have
Right.
daughters, how do you want them to grow up and mother? Like to forget themselves and you know, like run themselves into the ground mothering? Like no.
Right.
So like
Right.
we shouldn't do it either and kind of like show them how we take care of ourselves too.
Yeah, absolutely. I have three girls, so that's a conversation at our household a lot. And like
Hmm.
even walking the dog, I started making that time for myself. Like, no, you cannot come. And even though it sucks,
Hmm.
I'm like, I know they want to have fun, but I'm trying to show them that like I have a hard boundary and they're gonna see that and it's gonna be better for them to see that. So it's definitely a conversation we have often. And it's funny that you brought up sarcasm because I'm fluent in sarcasm. But again, I was
Yes.
raised by my dad. So there you go, masculine
Yep.
energy,
Yep.
Mr. Mom. That
Yep.
was my
And
primary household.
yeah, and sarcasm is also like kind of a coping mechanism. Like we turn to humor when things are hard and it's okay, but also kind of look beneath that and think what do I need right now that I'm not getting that's making this come out like this?
Yeah, mine's often more just like teasy now, but like, and you know, I relate to that, and I find reflection in Friends, the show Chandler, because he's very sarcastic. I'm like, oh, I'm a
Oh
Chandler. Like,
yeah.
okay, I get it.
Right. He's sarcastic and he's self-deprecating.
Right,
He's
right. I'm not
yeah.
quite that. quite to that point, but
He's
I'm
funny.
very, very fluent in the sarcasm.
Yes.
That's like my favorite show. So I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
can you tell us a little bit about your journey with motherhood and how that all, now knowing what you know, how did that look for you?
What's really crazy is I mentioned, like how your two kids can be nothing alike.
Mhm.
And my two fourth trimesters, if you want to call it that, were nothing alike. So my oldest, she was born February 2020, right before the world went a little haywire in March of 2020. And she was born a month early. She was in the NICU and, had like breathing issues and didn't come home for a couple weeks. And, like I was like in the NICU as much as I could, but she was like, in that little incubator thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't know any different. That was my first time doing this. But
And
that
then to
leave
do it
that,
during COVID is like
oh yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah,
Oh
we
my
didn't
gosh. I would have
see
been
my
panicked.
husband. My husband and I like didn't see talk about no village. Like we were literally quarantined, the three of us, 6 weeks into parenthood. And so that was a tough time, to put it lightly. And through that, like just working through early parenthood, I dealt with so many things that I hadn't expected in terms of balancing our relationship, which I was on maternity leave for 12 weeks and he had 2 weeks of paternity leave, which, is pretty standard in corporate
Mhm.
America. So, we like started out the first 2 weeks, like, waking up together and like watching The Office while I was pumping and he would bottle feed her and then I clean all the bottles and we go back to bed and it was fine. Then he had to go back to work. And I found myself when he would walk out the door just being like so resentful. Like because he's just like going off and like have his like normal day. He's like back to normal where I'm still like not I'm still bleeding, not okay physically. And he's off to work. And our daughter like couldn't latch. And so we had like all these like tongue tie
Oh,
issues. She didn't sleep. It was like a rough time. And then like compare that to when my son was born a couple years later and like a post-COVID world. And it was, summertime, it was nice out. And I had this like explosive creativity burst kind of thing and like totally like transformed as a person and like reconnected to who I was pre-childhood. It was crazy. Like it was like a renaissance in my life. Like it was like suddenly I wasn't like myself pre-motherhood, but I was like my original authentic self. And like I
right.
don't know if it was specifically being postpartum with him or if it was just being on he was also like an easier baby. So it was just a really different experience with him as a newborn. But it's kind of like you don't know what you're gonna get in terms
Right.
of your kids or your, postpartum experience.
Yeah, I actually just had my tubes removed. Actually, at the time of this recording, it's been a week. And so
Hey.
I got to the point like when I had my third, I literally, my husband and I were like, he's like, you've never been this good postpartum. I was like, I feel great. It's amazing. I felt magical. And then 6 months postpartum hit, and it was like being hit by a bus again. Like,
Oh
man,
gosh.
and it was the hardest postpartum I've ever had. Granted, I've never worked before, so I also work for a school from home and I
Hmm.
homeschool my kids. So I was like, I don't know how to balance this. We got a puppy a week before I found out I was pregnant with her, and he's insane and ill trained because I couldn't do it through my whole
Hmm.
pregnancy. And so
Right.
like I was a loon all the time. My mental capacity was shot. It's so different for each one because like I felt pretty good with my second. I always struggle with a little bit of depression. It was pretty normal, but I did okay with my second. My first was good for the most part. Getting out of the house, being a stay-at-home mom was kind of hard on me, so we had to start getting out. But like this last one, finally I was like, if it keeps getting progressively worse each pregnancy, we're going to stop here because I don't want
Yeah.
to disrupt my whole family yet again and put that on
Hmm.
everybody. So yeah, I finally had to like in my head, like in my heart, I would have a million babies, but like in my head, I was like, I can't go through that again because it was seemingly so amazing. And I had the summer off because she was born in April. I went back for 4 weeks. Then I was like, oh, this will be good. Then I have the whole summer off to spend with her. And when school came back, it was wild, like trying to find that balance and I completely understand the resentment stuff too, because my husband's been the same way where like he doesn't get much time. And so then it's like, I don't want to wake him up because I'm like, I know he's got to get up and go do a physical job. He's a mailman. And so I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't want to wake him up. But at the same time, I'm like, you should get up too.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I don't know if you've heard this, and I just thought of this when you mentioned like how things kind of like imploded 6 months postpartum. but I recently learned it takes 2 years, up to 2 years for your hormones to regulate after childbirth.
Yes.
So, my youngest is 2.5. And I honestly feel like a few months after he turned two, like something kind of lifted. I was like, what? Where am I? Who am I? What's happened? Like I was
Right.
like back. And I swear there's something to that. Just because like the first couple months might be okay. Like you really have a couple years before things are like
Right.
baseline again. So you kind of don't really know what's going to play out. And I think people
Yeah.
kind of like don't think about postpartum as being such a long period, but it's not just that fourth trimester, 3 months postpartum, it's
Mhm.
really like a couple years.
I always view people as being postpartum. Like if you've had a kid, you're postpartum for the rest of your life because like
Yeah.
the reality is, like you said, it does change you. So I always view it as that. But like with my others, it had happened and I could tell it was happening. And this time I was like the best version of myself. I was making smoothies every day and I struggle with consistency. So that was a big deal. I was like, yes, look at me, I'm healthy. And then it was like, bam. And so, yeah, I do know that. And like my youngest is now 19 months and that's the thing, we're getting to that like lifted phase and I can
Hmm.
feel like I'm like I see the light at the end of the tunnel and then I was like maybe I should have another baby and then I always wanted four and I was like but this happens every time, Jessica,
Hmm.
you get to this point, you're like I could do another and then it happens and you're like whoa, what did I sign up for? So I was like I just need to make the decision to force myself to be done. And so that's when I
Yeah.
went into that whole like surgery decision because I was like,
Hmm.
especially with ADHD, I don't think that's something that's talked about very much either. Is like I would have kids like potato chips. I would just keep having more because it's exciting, it's new. I love them. I want to be a
Right.
mom. I'm a bit, like I love
Yeah.
babies. I love being there for them. I love big families and the community of my little village, love tiny people, like
Yeah.
but it's like
Hmm.
I was like, I know myself enough to know like I need to force quit right here
Yeah.
where I'm at. So you had said you had a state of burnout. What did that all look like for you?
It looked like just kind of being directionless. I hit a point like maybe like a year postpartum with my son where I was so tired, like, because I just never stopped.
Mhm.
And I was, either like working or with them. And then I was just kind of like, what am I doing? And like, what am I doing it for? And I almost felt like I was lacking purpose or direction, like I didn't feel like I was living intentionally. And I suddenly started to think my kids are watching me and I'll be like an example of adult life to them. And like, what do I want like my legacy to be? Like, how do I want them to live their lives? How am I going to help them find their passions? And motherhood is a purpose of mine, but I wanted more purposes. You know what I mean? Like outside
Right,
of motherhood,
right.
and ended up actually on this whole path to becoming a coach about motherhood. So I didn't get too far from motherhood. I had this person reach out to me through like DMs on social media, and it was a life coach, and she was like offering a free session, and I'd never talked to a coach or met with a coach. So we have our first meeting over Zoom, and she just goes, like, tell me like what made you decide to meet with me. And I like opened my mouth to start talking and like I just started crying. And
Oh,
I was like joking. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know what this is about. I was like, we just met. This is our first Zoom. I'm like, I don't know why I'm like trying to talk to this stranger on like Zoom and like crying to them over like a simple question. But yeah, I think like burnout for me just showed up as like, I wasn't really being the mom I wanted. Like I was struggling to like show up as like I was trying to gentle parent, as they do on Instagram, and it
right.
wasn't going well with my toddler. And so I was feeling like kind of a failure there because like I was yelling at her and shaming her over things that like I didn't even have the knowledge to know like, oh, a 2-year-old shouldn't really actually be able to do that. But like I didn't know that at the time. And I think a lot of people who don't work with children or like have a lot of children in their lives, like they just don't have realistic expectations. So I felt like I was kind of failing there. And I was just like sort of missing like hobbies and passions in my life. And I was just sort of a little lost.
That's so interesting because it's like you're almost like I think of like NPC because my kids are gamers, like that, like not necessarily a shell of a person, but it's like that repetitive, you're there, you serve a purpose, but you don't necessarily feel like you're like your main character anymore. So it's like it's such a weird place I think to be in when you get to that point. But would you say that that specific call, like for one, what helped you decide to get on that call? Was that the turning point that realized you wanted to make that change, or was there something leading up to that that made you want to make a change and that pushed you into getting on that call?
I think when she reached out, I was like initially dubious because I was like, what does a coach even do? But I was curious to find out more. And I also had felt for a long time, like really going back to college, I felt like I just wasn't passionate about anything, or like I didn't know, I wouldn't have said like I knew what my purpose is in life. And I would have maybe heard people say that. And I would have kind of like rolled my eyes and been like, purpose, like just live, you know what I mean?
Right. Like that's not
But
real.
like,
Come on.
right. Yeah. Like that's not
Right.
real. You're asking too much. You have unrealistic expectations. But I always just kind of felt like I was like missing something, I guess. And I like wanted to find out what it was. So like a little bit of like curiosity, self-discovery. I work as an accountant also. That was like my career training. So it's like very left brained, but I was always this like creative person. And I just felt like I was like out of touch with a big part of who I was. And I kind of wanted to like find out who that was.
Right. And so that's what led you to that call. Like when they pitched that to you, you were just like, let's see. What can
Yeah,
it
I was
hurt?
like, it's free. Like, I'm kind of curious. And that's why, like, because I didn't have this like burning desire to meet with a coach, like it was just kind of like a why not? I think that's why I was so shocked when we started out the call and I was just like choking.
That's awesome. I would be like, I don't know what's happening, but I've been in that place before where I'm just like overly emotional. I'm like, what am I doing? And it's like you can't even
Yeah,
separate. Like your like elevated logical voice is like, what is happening here? Like,
right.
but
Yes,
that like
that voice
lower
was
part of
very
your brain is
loud.
like, we're done now. Floodgates are
Yep.
open. That's it.
Yep, and totally what happened. And I think also like one of the things that is like so sacred about coaching is just having that dedicated space, like where someone holds space for you. And like I didn't really even understand what holding space meant prior to, being coached and becoming a coach. But often we are just like go, 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 go. And we don't stop to like consider how we're feeling. We just like shove our feelings down and we just keep going because we have so much to do. But we don't think about like what do we really want. I've come to realize when I just don't like someone or like when I'm resentful of someone, it's probably because like they have something I want or they're doing something I wish I could do that I told myself I can't do. And so like I've been able to like find like connect with like what is it that I want. But until I had that moment with this person who was just listening to me and everything is stopped and someone's just listening to me. I think like a big part of me was like, someone's listening to me. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I almost feel like I never like, no, this doesn't happen.
Right. Like grown-up
Mhm.
conversation, they're actually paying attention. It's like a thing.
Mhm.
Like I'm having an adult conversation.
Yes.
So I'm a person of faith, and it makes me think of like, when people talk about envy, I had discussed this a long time ago on Instagram. I was talking about envy being, it can be healthy if it's in an inspirational way, but it's the purpose of saying envy is a sin is when it's consuming you and making you resentful and hateful towards other
Mhm.
people. And so in that coaching, that's one of the things I also was able to really get a better grasp of is like, what is my mind trying to tell me? Like, where is my direction? And I think a lot of those things that we like kind of succumb to are really supposed to be more directional. It's like anger, like anger is an emotion that's there for a reason to motivate and move us, but some people
Mhm.
get stuck in the anger and that's where it becomes that problem. And it's the same concept with the envy, that like thinking in terms of moms, like when you see other people and you're whatever jealous of their house or and you have that sense of envy, but it makes you like, well, if I don't have it, then they shouldn't either. That's where it becomes a problem. But if you use it in a directional way, like, oh, I'm feeling resentful for this reason, where do I want to go with that? It can be a way more useful tool. And when you learn how to do that and have somebody hold space for you for that, I think it really opens you up to becoming the person that you want to be. And prior to having that kind of knowledge, it's really hard to see past that.
Yeah, 100%.
What were some of the expectations, I guess, that you had to kind of let go of to get from that point of burnout and that turning point in your life to get to where you are now?
I had to let go of some expectations that, I needed to do everything all the time. I struggled with something called maternal gatekeeping, which is basically the inability to delegate, thinking
Mhm.
like, oh, I'll do it faster, I'll do it myself, or oh, I'll do it better, I'll do it myself, or no one does it like me, I'll do it myself, or if I leave, everyone's going to die. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
something I've had to change over the last couple years is letting go of control. Like we hold on to control when we feel out of control, but just realizing that, like trusting my husband,
Right.
trusting our family, our like the grandparents, like just letting go and accepting that like when you let go of something, someone else is going to do it their way, and that's okay. But just like really looking at what am I not letting go of in terms of like responsibilities and why. And, I realized like I was really the one standing in my own way of doing so many like acts of self-care or pursuing my interests or passions. So really just learning to let go a little bit.
Right. And it's interesting too, because like letting go of control is also a sense of control because you get to control what you let go of and have
Ooh,
the control over that. Right. So like,
I love that
depending on how you
perspective.
look at, yeah, depending on how you look at it, you can actually control the situation by letting go of that control. And then it's like, you get to decide that. You get to decide if you hate the dishes that you delegate that to somebody else, right? If that's something
Right.
that stresses you out, then you
Yep.
let somebody else do that. But I also struggled with that. It's like, I had that, like, I'm the mom. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be the one that
Right.
keeps up with the house. Why can't I do that? Again, that came with motherhood and ADHD and that like executive dysfunction that I struggle with. But I definitely hit some of those walls myself of like, this is my job and I'm not fulfilling that and kind of shaming myself from that. So I definitely resonate with that a lot.
Yeah, and you just saying like talking about hitting a wall, like there's something in my matrescence coaching, like we talk about called the maternal wall, which is basically like unrealistic expectations kind of like lay the foundation of motherhood. And so someone, I forget who said this, but you hit the maternal wall. Most women hit the maternal wall long before they hit the glass ceiling because it's just a matter of like not having adequate support and thinking like you make a choice, but it's really like you were forced into a choice. Like for example, like someone has passed over an opportunity for a promotion at work because, like maybe it would require travel or maybe it would
Right.
require things that someone assumes like a mom's not going to want to do. So like there's that. Or maybe like you step away from your job because you're struggling to balance working and motherhood and perhaps your health is declining. So like you leave your job, but like was that really a real choice? Because like you've had to work on your health because like your health is declining. So like it's like this false conception that there's like choices sometimes when
Right.
really you've just hit what's called the maternal wall, which can manifest in so many different ways for different people.
I love the way that I love that saying that it's very, very true. Like I know I've had situations like that too, where I forget, I think it was something with church and I was talking to my dad and I was like, well, nobody asked me. And he's like, yeah, but they probably assumed because you had the kids. I'm like, well, I'll decide that. Like, I
Right.
decide
Yeah.
that. Like, give me the option to say no at least. And I've said that a lot of times in my life. Just
Oh yeah.
acknowledge me and give me the option to tell you I
Hmm.
don't want to do it. Come on.
Yeah. Like it's like people kind of think they're doing a kindness, but really they're just taking your choices away.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Even if
Yeah.
they had the right idea to begin with, it's
Right.
like,
It's like that
let me
intent versus
decide.
impact kind of thing. Like,
Yes.
yes, you're trying to be kind and give me that grace, but you're also impacting me in a way that maybe I wanted to get out of the house. Maybe I wanted to be away for a while. Like you've actually
Right.
taken that option away from me by assuming that it's going to be too
Hmm.
hard. Or, yeah, I think that's a totally other topic that like we definitely don't talk about enough is just that trying to be intentional and trying to do the right thing, quote unquote, but like also how is that impacting the person that you're trying to do the right thing for?
Right. Yes. Best of intentions, but maybe not best of results.
Right, right. How did you kind of rediscover your interests and passions and like how did you decide to come to the point of parent coaching?
Kind of a funny story. When, I was coming up on my youngest, almost, being a year old, and my daughter she just turned 3. And we were just having a tough time as a family. And so like anyone, when they're having a tough time, I created an anonymous Twitter account and vented about family life
I
under
love
this
this.
anonymous.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So, it was like very like lighthearted, but a little sarcastic. So we have that language in common or, irony. There was like funny things my kids said. And when I was little, I used to love to write. And my grandmother was a writer. She kind of had her own like second act, like after she got divorced in her 50s and like went back to school and became a writer for a newspaper in her city where she lived and like always had like the cleverest things. And she always really encouraged me to write. And when I was 10 years old, I wrote like 100-page novel that was kind of like a ripoff on Harry Potter, but it was, you know, it
But it
was
was
mine and
yours. It was
it was
yours.
mine. And so I always had meant to write again, but like like I would write things for school, but like, academic assignments and then like after I graduated from school, I never really did that. And I always kind of meant to do that again. And so Twitter kind of became, I know it's called X now. Twitter sort of became this like
It will
outlet
always
for
be Twitter.
me. Right. I agree. I was just like, like kind of like putting stuff out there and then like, like would randomly see myself in like BuzzFeed or HuffPost and like it was like kind of cool. I was like they had this like secret Twitter account. I was like, oh, people like the things I'm saying. And it was like this huge self-confidence boost because I used to say I never had a Twitter account because I didn't think I had anything to say. And that's so sad to me now that I felt that way, but turns out I have a lot to say. So I would say like moments of just kind of exasperation, just wanting to, like have like an outlet, like in a place where I was anonymous, so I wouldn't be
Right.
judged, or I would be judged, but maybe no one would know it was me.
Right.
I just like started writing and I just like had so much fun with it. I was like, I love this writing. And it was actually through that account that the life coach had reached out to me because she probably saw this woman clearly in need of coaching, like complaining about every aspect of family life. She's like, wow, she's like gonna be an
Oh, girl,
easy
you need the
yes.
help. Let me help you.
Right. So through working with her, that's how she brought up parent coaching. Like I never heard of it. And that was interesting to me because like I was pretty deep on like parenting Instagram, following all the like gentle parent accounts and feeding your kids accounts and like all these things. I'd never heard of parent coaching. I started researching it and I was like, you know what? Like I don't know if I could do this, but at bare minimum, maybe I could stop yelling at my poor little 3-year-old who's, clearly like I'm not showing up how I want. I was like, at minimum, I will hopefully at least take something away from my family from this training. And like I had never really I've always been a very risk averse person. So it took me like months of deliberating like would I sign up for this training? And in the scheme of things, like that kind of opened a new door of just like taking a chance on myself. It's kind of like starting with one place of I had always wanted to get back into writing and it was like something I did when I was little. And so I started there and it just kind of like one step led to the next step. And then turns out I love coaching and, it's hard to get a business off the ground, but I've kind of got, like a thing going now, a
Right.
few clients and some consistent stuff. It's just like crazy how venting on Twitter led to starting my own business.
And it's just taking that little step forward. We want to look at such big milestones, but we really don't think about just the small things, the small little decisions that we make that can completely change the direction of our life. Because that's really how I got going with TikTok, though, because during the pandemic, it was like everyone got on TikTok and I was looking for parenting stuff. And like, then I found a couple parent coaches, but I was also in network marketing. So I got a business coach that was like very set in mindset. And then I was like, I'm going to be a coach. But it all started
Mm-hmm.
with that little bitty decision to be like, I want to do something different. I was scared to drop the money because it was not cheap. But I'm the kind of person that like, if it's there, I'm going to jump off the edge like right away. Don't think about it. Just go and then
Mm-hmm.
worry about it
Yeah.
later. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be, where I'm at now. And so, I mean, with that conversation, can you kind of tell us like how all of this has impacted your family as a whole now and like your relationship with like your spouse and your kids and everything, like where you're at now?
Yes. Even if I had ended up deciding I didn't want to coach other parents, like the investment was absolutely worth it because through learning about emotional intelligence and empathy and how our bodies are physically reacting to like certain things in parenthood that trigger us and like put us in that fight or flight state, I think it's been truly transformational in terms of really understanding who I am and why I react to certain things the way I do. And I recently read something which really resonated, which was that oftentimes when our children are struggling, coaching or therapy for the parent has equal or better results than actually coaching or therapy for the child. And I've seen that in my own family. Like I haven't coached my husband,
Same.
at least not officially that he's aware of, but I think he's observed me doing certain things that work well with the kids to get them to cooperate more easily or, get them to be more, have more fun, be more playful, like have a happier day to day. And I've seen him kind of replicate those things sometimes. And, inside I'm like, like not only is it contagious, but I've also changed the way that I communicate and I've become more aware of my needs behind my behavior. And that's de-escalated a lot of conflicts that my husband and I could have had, of me coming from a place of lacking because, oh, like he went to the gym and I didn't go to the gym. And so now I'm resenting him because he went to the gym. But really, like, why didn't I go to the gym? Like, I was in my own way for that. You know what I mean? So I kind of like understanding, like, I always thought I was an emotionally intelligent person, but I've come a long way. And I'm not going to say I wasn't one, but I have grown so much in that. And I think it's helped not only like me as a mom, which in turn has helped my children, but it's also helped our relationship just for me to be more cognizant and conscious of like making sure my needs are met in our relationship too.
When you look back on that shift that you've had through motherhood and how you've changed as a person, taking time for yourself and putting more on the line for yourself and also for your family, what are the biggest changes you've seen from prior to having kids and now, and then like into having kids and that shift, and then into, I guess, kind of betting on yourself and moving forward in your purpose and passions?
I think before motherhood, I feel like up until that point, I was just kind of following some generic blueprint for life. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like the narrative when you're little, like, okay, like you're gonna, work really hard in school and then you're gonna go to college and work really hard there. And then you're gonna get a good job and work really hard there and build your career. And then you're gonna get married and then you're gonna have kids and you're just gonna do everything. Like
Yeah.
it kind of ended though with the like get married and have kids and then like really no guidance on how you are married with kids and have this big job and do all these things. It just kind of ended with that. So I'm just sort of like following along this like plan that have been kind of laid out. And to be honest, like I never really thought about what it would actually be like to be a mom. It's just like you kind of see like in the movies, oh, this is the American dream. This is the ultimate thing. The get married, have a couple kids, get a dog. Although I married someone allergic to dogs, so we don't have a dog. And like I'm just kind of like following this plan. And then as I've achieved all these things on the list, the degree, the job, the husband, and now the kids, I'm just kind of like, what now? And I think that's kind of where, as I'm talking to you right now, I feel like some things are clicking actually, because
Right.
it's like you have this blueprint, but it kind of ended there. And so then I was like, now what am I supposed to do? I have all the things
Right.
and I did all the things. And again, like coming back to the matrescence, it's like often mom's experience, and I think dad's experience too, like this shift mentally of from me to we. It's not just about me anymore. It's like there's these other people. And I grew up in a family where like my mom stayed home with us and she started working once we were both grown and out of the house, but like I was kind of like in this uncharted territory where I was still working and I was a mom. And how was that supposed to look? Like that's not what was modeled to me. Like growing up I
Right.
had one friend who had a mom who worked and her parents were actually divorced. And so it was just like, it was totally different dynamic, but like, I didn't see that growing up. So I think a lot of us trying to balance it and do it all, like, there was no blueprint for this. I just saw myself like not showing up how I wanted and just felt like I was kind of failing. I was like making some sacrifices professionally, working less. Like I used to work like all the time, like late nights and weekends. And then once I had my daughter, I would still like work after she went to bed. But then once I had two kids, I was like putting them to bed until it was time for me to go to bed. And I was like, well, what gives?
Right.
And so I just, had to like sort of felt like I was failing there at work because I was like not the worker I used to be because I literally couldn't be. And so I think I just had to take a really hard look in the mirror and get really intentional about how was I spending my time and what was I modeling.
As you were talking, it made me think of, there's this book by Sean Aker and it's called The Happiness Advantage. When I was in network marketing, he had done a training for us. And one of the things he had talked about was that we use happiness as like this milestone or this kind of like yardstick for where we need to be. But like you said, you got to the point where you were like, I have all this stuff. So what now? And it's like truly finding the joy in the journey, because we think that happiness is like on the other side of that next thing, when the reality is once we get there, we just change the goal. Like I'll be happy when I get to here. Okay, now I'm here, but I'm still not happy. So maybe it's when I get to here. And so that was one of those things that was really eye-opening for me, because I used to think in terms of that like a lot. Like if I do the right things and I check the right boxes, then surely my life will be what it's supposed to be. White picket fence, that whole thing. And that's what I thought I was going to have. I don't even have a fence now where I live.
Me neither. I don't have a fence.
Right? I mean, I would love one, but I don't. But
yeah,
like that's where I
fences
thought
are really
I would
expensive.
be, right? And so I had this like vision of like, when I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'll have all the money, so I'll have all the things, So when I stay home, I'll be able to be the mom that like sends her kids to school and then goes and gets their nails done and cleans the house and it's all perfection and they have the big yard and and it did not happen like that. And now I homeschool and it's a whole other thing. We really do look at it in terms of the specific milestones that have been set to us. And if you want to talk about taking away choices, that's kind of one of those things. It's like these conditioned thoughts of what it's supposed to look like. And then when it doesn't and we're not happy, we think that there's something wrong or we've done something wrong, when the reality is it's a picture that's been portrayed to us that we just inherited from somebody else and not realized it.
And that's actually in matrescence coaching called the maternal mandate. So you're describing all these things that have
It's
real
like
names.
I should just be a matrescence.
It's like, did you already do the coach training? Yeah, it's the maternal mandate is basically like if you're a woman, then you need to be a mom and you need to love every second of it. And if you have a kid, oh, you need to have at least two kids. Like you can't stop there. And then like, oh, like, it just kind of keeps going with what we expect of women.
How did, I guess, vulnerability play out in that? Like, was there a sense of vulnerability that you had to have to say, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to be? Or what did that look like?
I basically realized that I had been living a life where I could avoid vulnerability like at all costs, essentially. So, even when I created that anonymous Twitter account and was just like putting funny, lighthearted stuff out there, I felt so afraid of like someone just like rejecting something I said or judging me. And I realized I'd always made like very safe choices. And actually the coach that I had worked with, the life coach, had made this point to this effect that basically like we have different parts of ourselves and like, none of the parts are good or bad. But sometimes like a certain part of you will kind of like overpower the rest of you. And when it came to like my fear of taking risk, of taking a chance on myself, of putting myself out there, of, being judged, that was kind of like ruling and like overriding the side of me that was creative and like wanted to say something, but like was afraid everyone would be like, no, that's dumb. You know what I mean? Like that fear of rejection. So it was, like baby steps, right? Because like I'd been so cautious of like what I would say to anyone or what I would put out there under my name that, it felt safer to me to just try this at first, like as an anonymous person, and eventually like built up my security and confidence. And, while like kind of working on myself in other respects along the way to eventually just be okay. Like, I'm just going to say it. And if someone rejects something I say, like, am I going to be okay? Yeah. Like that's resilience. So I've been like, really working on resilience. And actually that reminds me, when we were speaking before, resilience came to mind because we were talking about how, we were like kind of chasing happiness or like chasing outcomes as opposed to like the journey along the way. And I think that that's been a big part of, what have I let go of? Because it's not about the outcome. It's really about every step in between the outcome. And often like the outcome you have in mind isn't where you're going to end up, and you're going to end up somewhere better, but unless you start taking these little chances and like betting on yourself, you're just going to stay in the same spot where you are now. How does it feel to say like, you're never going to change, you're going to be this way forever? Like most people want to grow and evolve, but like, you're not going to do that unless you take that risk and put yourself out there and lean into vulnerability.
Right. And I think it's worth noting, like you had said, sometimes it's a small risk. Sometimes it's a way for you to step out of your comfort zone and still have that safety net, like being anonymous as you work towards that. It doesn't have to be this big extravagant thing. Sometimes we just look at it as take the risk and they think of the risk as like bungee jumping, like it doesn't have to be that big. You could just,
No.
you can get on a tiny little baby zip line or something, like it can be a smaller thing that feels more comfortable for you as you work up towards that. And like you said, that's how you build that resiliency to move forward as a person, as a new person, as just a growing and evolving person. Because that's, what we're really here to do is to become the best versions of ourselves and help raise the best versions of our kids that we can, but know that they are going to also work on becoming the best version of themselves. Aside from us, the world is going to affect them in different ways, and that's totally okay. Is there any advice that you would want someone to take away who's listening to this? They get nothing out of this. What would you want someone listening to take away?
Start using your voice. Even if you don't think you have anything to say until you use it. You have to exercise it in order for it to really be there. And you kind of, you never know like what might come up, whether it's like, you've been like silencing yourself or trying to put everyone else's needs before you, like speak up and see how it feels, or like write it down. Like some people, like for myself in particular, like writing is kind of my preferred thing. So it's like you start like journaling and like suddenly all this other stuff comes up. I would want someone to take away from this that motherhood is like one of the best opportunities to really get to know who you truly are and see sides of yourself that you might not have seen for a long time or that you didn't even know were there. And I think that was really the ultimate surprise becoming a mom. Like I just didn't expect all of the personal growth. And I think if you give yourself permission to access curiosity about like what you need, what you want, who you are, what you like, you never know like what you're going to find there, but it's going to be a more authentic you.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Where can people find you?
Either on Instagram, which is Parenting Presently, or they can find my website, which is parentingpresently.com. And I'm not really consistently on any other platforms right now.
Not even your anonymous Twitter?
No, anonymous Twitter had to go. I turned my anonymous Twitter account. Well, I also had an anonymous Instagram with like the same content, and I actually changed it into Parenting Presently. So some of my legacy mom humor is still at the bottom. I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to leave this there because it's kind of like a testament of the transformation from like overwhelmed, sarcastic mom to like empowered parenting coach. So I just leave it there. It's my lived experience.
Beautiful. I love when you can see the progression of a person's account too. I actually had to make a new account because my account was a hot mess. But like I do like when you can see the progression of a person who's gone from mom to like business owner or whatever it looks like. I just like when you see that, you can visually see that journey as you scroll the account. That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for having this conversation. This has been so much fun. I feel like it was a really good conversation. It didn't go like I expected, but it went so much better than I expected, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Jessica. I really appreciate you having me. And like, like I said, I had no idea what to expect at all. So this was awesome talking to you and being with you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Remember, you are powerful, you are worthy, you are valued, and you are loved. Keep pushing, keep loving, and most importantly, keep believing in your amazing ability to empower your legacy.